Good evening, everyone. If I could get all of the panelists to turn off their video for now so we can go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Ashlyn Shockley Martin. I am the founder and a member of the board of directors for the Chisholm Leadership Academy. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, we are a Georgia-based nonprofit organization that works to diversify the leadership pipeline by providing middle and high school girls of color with culturally responsive civic education, mentorship, and experiential instruction. And so on behalf of the entire board, it is my pleasure to welcome you to Chisholm's Legacy. Before we begin, I really want to extend well wishes to everyone that's joining us. We recognize that these continue to be uncertain times and that many of you have been directly impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. While we hope that you and your loved ones are healthy and safe, we want to be a resource if you are not. And so if you or someone that you love is in need of services or needs help with identifying resources, please feel free to reach out to us. The best way to contact us is via email. That's info@chisholmleadershipacademy.org. Again, that's info@chisholmleadershipacademy.org. On a brighter note, we are excited for tonight's discussion. We are honored to have Senator Pat Spearman of Nevada, Representative Kim Schofield from here in Georgia, and educator Ebony Murphy-Root as panelists this evening. They will join my colleague and fellow board member, Ebony Dotson, for a conversation about the Equal Rights Amendment and leading as women of color in the 21st century. We thought that tonight's discussion would be timely for a number of reasons, including the release of the Mrs. America series on Hulu. I hope that you all have had a chance to catch up and see at least the Shirley episode of Mrs. America. But the series follows the battles to ratify and hinder the Equal Rights Amendment through the lenses of women leaders, including our inspiration, Shirley Chisholm. In a moment, we'll share a clip from episode 3, Shirley. We want you to be actively engaged in this conversation. So please use the Q&A feature. It's at the bottom toolbar on your Zoom lens. Use that to post questions to the panelists or to our team. If you hear something that really resonates with you, let us know in the chat dialogue box. You can join that. Make sure you have set your default to all panelists and attendees so everyone can see what you have to say. And then we encourage you to let people know that you're joining us via Twitter and Facebook using our hashtags. That's hashtag CLA, like Chisholm Leadership Academy, Girls Lead, and hashtag This Is Our Table. So please use those. We sent out an email that has the information for all of our speakers. So tweet at them if you hear something that really resonates. But know that this is your table and we hope that you enjoy the conversation.
Most of our communication has been through letters.
Well, she could be a member of the White Citizens Council for all we know.
Oh.
And she is probably going to be elected head of the Louisiana chapter.
What am I supposed to do?
Kick her out.
She's an effective organizer. Very well liked.
All the more reason to set an example.
They say Shirley Chisholm tells it like it is. So I'm gonna tell it like it really is. There are women within range of my voice right now that support the government. And there are women that support Humphrey and Wallace, and this is your right. But if you're talking about women becoming a political force to be reckoned with, You have to decide whether or not you're going to go with the candidate who cares about women's rights and will go with you all the way down the line, whether you'll support one of the other candidates, because it has been the traditional thing to do. In this country, everybody is supposed to be able to run for president, but that has never really been true. Somebody had to do it first. So I did it. I did it because I was the only one who had the audacity to shake this system up. Go with me on the first ballot. Don't play yourself cheap. I beg you, you did not come here to be delivered.
So now you're breaking the rules? Rules. Rules to conventions, and you're lost your mind.
Oh, and who gets to make the rules? It's rigged. The whole damn system. And it's been going on for so long, you don't even feel the stress.
Good evening. My name is Ebony Dotson, and I will be your moderator this evening. I would first like to welcome our panelists, Senator Spearman, Representative Schofield, Ms. Ebony Murphy-Root, and I believe Representative Cunningham is also going to be joining us this evening for our first ever virtual fireside chat. Tonight, we are going to delve into a conversation on the legacy of Shirley Chisholm, as well as the Equal Rights Amendment and leadership in the 21st century and what it means for women of color. We invite our participants to join us in the chat, but also share your questions for our panelists as well using the Q&A feature. And of course, we will also be polling throughout the night. So we encourage your participation when those polls go up. And to get things started, I want to have our panelists briefly introduce themselves. And as those introductions are going, we will shortly after that, we'll have our first poll question, which is simply for the participants in the audience to let us know where you are joining us from. So we'll kick things off with Senator Spearman. If you would please briefly introduce yourself.
Hi there, everyone. And you know, it's dangerous to give a preacher the mic first, but I will comply. I am Senator Pat Spearman, and I represent Senate District 1 which is most of North Las Vegas. And yes, North Las Vegas is really a city separate from Las Vegas in Nevada. I have been serving in this capacity since 2012. I'm currently one of the co-majority whips. I chair Commerce and Labor. I am vice chair of Health and Human Services, and also serve on the Energy Committee. I was the one that carried the bill in 2017 for Nevada to ratify the ERA, and I couldn't be more proud to be amongst the women who are continuing the fight of Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator Spearman. Ms. Ebony Murphy-Root, will you briefly introduce yourself? I think you're muted.
Good evening. I'm joining you from Long Beach, California. I am a native of the great state of Connecticut. I teach in Santa Monica now, and I have been teaching middle school English for about 11 years now. My background is literacy and curriculum, and also English and African American studies.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. And Representative Schofield, if you would please briefly introduce yourself to the audience.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm State Representative Kim Schofield, and I represent Atlanta. And so I have parts of the city of Atlanta. I have some counties of East Point, the cities of East Point, College Park, Forest Park, and Southeast Atlanta. I've served since 2017. I sit on the Health and Human Services Committee, Small Business Development for the state. I'm a part of the Atlanta Commission on Women, and I work as a lupus researcher for Emory University. Happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us. And so we're going to get started first by polling our audience. Again, that first poll question is going out, and it's going to be for us to know where our audience is joining us from. And then we'll jump right into our discussion. All right, so it looks like the vast majority of our participants are right here in Georgia, but we also have some participants who are joining us from the Northeast, Midwest, a few from the Southwest, and about 16% of our participants are actually out on the West Coast. So welcome to all of you. We're going to begin our discussion with some general questions, which any one or all of you on the panel can certainly chime in on these questions. The first question is, what impact have Shirley Chisholm's work and legacy had on your personal journey?
I'm the teacher. I'll raise my hand first.
Awesome, Ebony.
Just reviewing the episode today and also reviewing Shola Lynch's wonderful documentary, Unbought and Unbossed. What strikes me about Congresswoman Chisholm is that she jumped in before the country was ready for her. If you wait until this country is ready for you as a Black woman, you'll still be waiting. And so I think she set the stage for folks like President Obama, who we also were not ready for. And then, 2008 happened. So the ability to be ready before everybody else is ready. That's what is really impressive about her journey in our country's history.
Absolutely.
So for me, I started in this work as an advocate for people living with lupus. And I am a person that lives with lupus. And so part of my journey and doing the advocacy work was I realized after about 8 years of doing it, while we were making a great impact, we weren't really touching and changing policy. So I took a bold step to call everybody under the Gold Dome and introduce myself and say, hi, my name is Kim Schofield. I'd like to come talk to you about lupus. Hello. And they hung up. So I put my clothes on, I went down to the Capitol and I walked around the Capitol floor and everybody that had a badge, I said, hi, my name is Kim Schofield. I called you yesterday and you hung up or we got disconnected. I have lupus, I still want to talk. So I think for me, what she represented in my life is a person with a strong voice, that I want you to know that after being down there, just going down there that one time and starting building relationships, I stayed, and for 8 years, I was able to get my first bill passed as a constituent. Prior to that, I had never been in the Capitol. I've always been a voter, but I've always been engaged. So when you see something that's wrong, you must speak out. So number one, being that small voice, one person makes a huge difference. She fought for systematic change, and knowing the health disparities, racial disparities, and all kinds of things that are going on at this time, she wasn't afraid to go against the system. I went down there saying that I have a problem and I want somebody to listen. The last thing was that unbossed and unbrought mentality. She knew her line and drew her line in the sand and said, I'm not afraid to speak truth to power. Here I am, like it or not, I have something to say and you're going to hear me raw.
Absolutely. Those are all excellent points. Thank you, Representative Schofield. Senator Spearman?
Yeah, I and my sister and about 13 other students were among the first to integrate a high school in Alabama, town called Hopeville. And it's called Hopeville if you're from up north, and it's called Hopeful if you're down south. And it was not a pleasant experience. And I think that and a couple other things are what really shaped me into being what I call a good troublemaker. I happened to be, I think I was a junior in high school when I first learned about Congresswoman Chisholm, our history teacher, Donna P. Johnson. And you know, there's some teachers that have such an effect on you. It doesn't matter how long ago it was, you'll always remember them. And I remember her starting the class off one day saying, there is a possibility that we will have an African-American to be our next president. And I sat up and I'm thinking, whoa, really? And she began to tell us about Shirley Chisholm. I became a fan of hers immediately. I liked the fact that she didn't wait for permission. She knew what she had to do and she did it. What I usually tell people is this: history does not remember people who act with timidity. History remembers people who act even when they are afraid. When I decided to carry, I was asked to carry the ERA as a bill in 2015, I did. And unfortunately, my party did not own the legislature. And so they heard it in the committee, but then they dismissed it. I was up for re-election in 2016, and that's what I ran on. I ran on re-elect me, and we will ratify the ERA. And so I hope that what I am doing as a legislator is in the spirit, the true spirit of what Congresswoman Chisholm did, and that is act even when you're afraid, even when nobody else wants to do it, act anyway if it's the right thing to do. And I just want to give a caveat here. Here on the West Coast, it's just a little bit after 5. So there are a lot of people who still may be in their Zoom meetings. And so they may join us a little bit later, but it's not because they're not interested.
Thank you, Senator Spearman. I think all of you raised some very excellent points, and I think that's an excellent segue into our second question, which is that all of you have sought elected office or served as an elected official. In your opinion, what is the greatest challenge faced by women of color in politics? And this is a two-part question. The second part being, what ideas or suggestions do you have for overcoming those challenges? Representative Schofield, I'll come to you first.
Great question. I think one of the biggest challenges or really opportunities is to really be comfortable in owning your space. Do not be afraid. And if you are afraid, can you do what needs to be done while you're afraid? To Senator Spearman's point, it's that the biggest challenge we face is when we are not true to ourselves and we allow other people to box us in or intimidate and bully us. I think we have to be clear, as you have to know that wherever you are, you have a right to be there and you have a right for your voice to be heard. And so it takes the courage and tenacity to stand back and say, you know what? I have something of value to bring to the table. And who is going to hear me? So I say you make yourself too relevant to be ignored. That means that you say things with your power, your belief, your data to back it up. But once you say it, let it rest there and let everybody else figure out what needs to be done. Own your space, be comfortable of who you are becoming, and don't let others define your power for you. Everybody has value. And just by the mere fact that you walk into a room, you have added value to conversations and that environment.
Thank you.
The other one, yeah.
Would any of the other panelists like to add to that question?
Yeah, I'll jump in, and I'll say Representative Schofield is exactly right. My bishop has said on several occasions that the difference between a heretic and genius is time. The difference between a heretic and genius is time. And when you walk into a space and you project ownership of that space, and your body language and everything says, in essence, I dare you to put me out. I grew up when it was not popular. As a matter of fact, they didn't even recognize women ministers. And I was in many of the Black churches still today don't. But I knew God had called me to preach, so I preached anyway. I was among the first women to integrate a Army combat service unit, which was the military police, as an officer. They didn't want me there, but I stayed there anyway, regardless of the fact that they were trying to push me out. I stayed there anyway. I know that when you do what you are called to do, and I really believe that this is more than just public service. I really believe that this is a calling. And when you do what you are called to do, nobody can put you out. I can't tell you how many times I'm walking through an airport or walking through a building or whatever, and someone will come up to me and they'll say, "Can you tell me where?" And I'm like, I don't work here. And they say, "Oh, you're not like the supervisor?" No, it's just that my grandmother taught me, walk into a building like you own it and dare people, to put you out. I want to mention one of the other challenges that elected Black women who are running for office have, and that is in the fact of raising money. White men raise much more money. I want to say it's something like 3 to 1 in terms of what they can raise and what white women can raise. And Black women, it's even less than that. And so that's one of the challenges. And I think that overcoming that challenge is us walking into what we have already created. And that is, nobody can win anywhere, any office, unless Black women support them. And we have to own that.
Excellent point, Senator Spearman. And I like what you stated about purpose. I was actually listening to a message yesterday from church, and the pastor stated that God's purpose always prevails. And so that resonated with me, and kind of heard that echoed in what you just shared with us, that it really is about purpose, and you have to serve sort of with that passion and purpose. I believe that we now have Representative Cunningham, who's on with us and wants to join in on the panel. I'm waiting to see her pop up here on the screen. There she is. Hi, Representative Cunningham.
Hi.
Hi. How are you?
I'm good. I'm a little tired, but I'm good.
Well, we thank you for joining us this evening. We are already into our discussion, but we're going to move on to our next question. So I'll probably come to you in just a little bit to hear your thoughts. But the next question is, what advice do you have for women and girls of color who are interested in pursuing office or becoming more involved in activism? And Ebony, I'll start with you, and then I'll go to Representative Cunningham for this question.
Well, I'm from a very tiny state. I'm from Connecticut, where it's super easy to get involved in politics. You just show up at a couple events and you get on the list. And if you want to talk to your state senator, you just give Dick Blumenthal or Chris Murphy a call and they will get back to you. Connecticut is just that way. And so when I moved to California in 2015, I thought, well, how do I get involved in a state like this? This is a huge state. You know, my parents didn't grow up here. Not everybody knows my grandparents. But I just started showing up to things. I joined a Democratic club and I really leaned into my interests. I'm not a lawyer. I don't have an MPA. I'm an English teacher. That's what I lead with. Those are my skills. I show up, I say, I can edit this. I can speak in front of any crowd. Where are the teenagers? I will wrangle them. So lean in to what your skills are and what your background is, because everybody's needed. Politics does not just need to be led by a room full of lawyers, though we appreciate the lawyers. Everybody's required. So show up. Be clear with what your skills are and just start showing up to things locally at the state level. If there is a panel, show up, sit in the front row. After, go talk to people. I think if you want to be involved in politics, you don't have to be an extrovert, but you do need to like people and want to talk to people and want to hear their story and want to hear about what moves them and what drives them. And if you are interested in people, people will love to be interested in you because everyone likes to tell their story. So just show up and just lead with who you are is what I would say.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree. It's so important to just show up. That's really the first step. Representative Cunningham, what would you add to that?
I would say, find what you are passionate about, because I'm a nurse by profession and I'm passionate about health. And when the president of Barack Obama decided to run and he said, I'm going to work on healthcare. Matter of fact, at the time, my husband was sick and I said, oh, I got to do something. I was already an activist in my community. And I went out and I said, look, let's organize and work to support the ACA. So that I was passionate about it. Plus, it was up close and personal to me. And most of the times when things are up close and it's personal to you and you have that burning desire to act, then in most cases, it doesn't matter what anybody says or if anybody tell you no, you're going to do it anyway. And once you move on your action and what you believe and what your principles are, then the universe will open up to you and you will move into the circle where you need to be. Because for me, I'm just a little country girl, born in the country, raised by grandparents in a village of other relatives, and never imagined that I would be serving in the North Carolina General Assembly at this time. So, find your passion and let it lead you. And that just happened to be health. And if you health, you into community, you like people, you don't have to like them all the time, but you have to have that innate ability that you can bring people together and work with anybody. And that's my background. So that's what I believe is having that passion and that burning desire to act.
I like that. Passion is so important, particularly in public service. You really have to have sort of a passion and a desire to give back and to serve others in your community. So we thank you for that and for sharing sort of your perspective there. We're going to pause here momentarily. We have another question that we'd like insight from the audience on. So we're going to do a poll here and also check to see if we have any questions from our audience. Okay, so our audience shared that 72% of them would support a woman candidate by volunteering on a campaign. 56% would support a woman candidate as a financial contributor. And then 83% will advocate for policies that uplift and empower women and people of color. And 17% said that they would like to be an elected official one day. So very interesting results. Thank you, audience, for sharing and participating. We're going to shift gears just a bit here, and let's talk more specifically about the Equal Rights Amendment. And Senator Spearman, this question is coming to you. You led the fight to ratify the ERA in your state. Can you talk about the significance of the ERA historically, and then tell us more about the impact for women and femmes in Nevada?
Yeah, I want to begin by reading just a portion of Congresswoman Chisholm's speech for the Equal Rights Amendment. And she says, the argument that this amendment will not solve the problem of sex discrimination is not relevant. If the argument were used against the Civil Rights Bill, as it has been used in the past, the prejudice that lies behind it would be embarrassing. Of course, laws will not eliminate prejudice from the hearts of human beings, but that is no reason to allow prejudice to continue to be enshrined in our laws to perpetuate injustice through inaction. And it was really important to me to lead this. I'm the kind of person, because of my background and because I've always been in communities that have been marginalized, I've always fought for equal rights. And so fighting for that for me was about taking it one step further. There were people in our legislature that said, Pat, you shouldn't be carrying that. That's one of those fluff bills, and you're gonna get a reputation for somebody who can't do the hard work. And somebody else said, well, it's just a symbol. And somebody else said, well, it's frivolous. We should be wasting our time and that sort of thing. And my response was, if it's frivolous, then humor me. And if it's a symbol, everyone who is married wears a ring. That is not your spouse sitting on your hand. That is a symbol. As a Christian, I wear a cross around my neck sometimes. That's not Jesus. That is a representation of the leader of my faith. And so symbols are powerful because they represent something that is greater than us, and it points to that greater belief. I would say this: carrying the ERA and then finally seeing it ratified in Nevada and then just watching it explode across the country, for me, it has been extremely satisfying, extremely satisfying. And it wasn't just me, it was a lot of other people involved in that. The very first day of our session in 2017, he's now the first African-American elected statewide in Nevada, ever, Attorney General Ford. But then Majority Leader Ford stood up and said, this session, we will ratify the ERA. And the next thing he says, we will pass an equal pay bill. And so it's a matter of staying true to your beliefs, what you believe in, and making sure that no one can take you off of that. In old church, we used to say, I'm like a tree planted by the rivers of water, and I shall not be moved. And once I set my mind to something, somebody telling me that I can't do it is just like saying sick 'em to a pit bull. Don't tell me I can't do it, because I'm gonna prove to you that it will get done. It might take a minute, but we're gonna get it done. Did I answer your question?
You did. You did, and you answered it with great passion. So thank you. Our next question, this is coming to you, Representative Schofield. You are one of the sponsors of the HR 16, a resolution to ratify the ERA here in Georgia. And I'd like for you to kind of tell us the status of that legislation and how allies in Georgia and across the nation can support your efforts.
Thank you. So first I want to say to Senator Spearman, yeah, you're a pit bull. When you come to Georgia, we're going to have to hook up. I'm originally born in New York, so I understand what that looks like. But yeah, I had the opportunity to sign on the bill with many of my colleagues, and similar to some of the points that Senator Spearman made, my question was, when are we going to get this done? And so we have been fighting this battle for a long time. This bill comes time and time again in Georgia, and we just had not seen the traction and the support and the priority that it needs to be given. And so working through this bill, we were able to, again, get some traction. And then what happened was COVID-19, when we gavelled and were in, suspension mode, has put us back and stalled us back. But it doesn't mean we're stopped. Delay is not denial. And so delay is not denial. So right now it is in a holding pattern, but we will not stop until we can get this ratified. We are very committed. And beyond passionate, we are taking this action to make sure it gets done. And so how we can get the help from other allies and supporters on this is a couple of things, is to put pressure on the legislators who are in opposition to do this. Yes, I work with Representative Billy Mitchell and others on this bill. So this is not a one and done. We know we were gonna have an uphill battle, and that's why we're not stopping. The other things people can do is not just calling but blasting the ones that are in opposition on social media. That's how you get people's attention. You start rallying and asking them the questions. How do you feel? What do you think? Will you support? The other thing is to make sure, action. I'm very practical. Show up to where they're doing town halls. Attend their town hall, online town hall meetings. Host a town hall for yourself to make sure you facilitate the conversation. We have to keep the conversation alive. We cannot just wait until session begins, but this is a year-round conversation. Be innovative and creative in everything that you do. A no does not necessarily mean it's done. For every no, there's someone that's going to say yes. So what we will do in the Georgia State Assembly, we will continue, Representative Mitchell, Representative Sandra Scott, myself, and others who have signed on this bill. We are committed not to let it die, but we're committed to move it forward. Get local media involved. I would say, talk about the significance, and we see why ERA needs to be amended right at this time in the midst of the corona, how the surfacing of all of these disparities against women and this separation that continues to perpetuate while we are going through the midst of a pandemic crisis. We need this passed now. So those that are not just passionate, but to see the need and we'll keep talking about this need, talk it up till people get tired of you talking about it. One more person says to me, I am so tired of you talking about this issue, then guess what? I've done the job.
Yeah, I like that. Great points. And again, we heard sort of that theme echo, that showing up is important, but also to continue the conversation. It's necessary to always keep the conversation going. And so we thank you for that. And we hope that those of you who are in Georgia will actually take action and add to the conversation by sharing your thoughts and your support for the Equal Rights Amendment if that is what you agree with. And we hope that you do, because equal rights are important for all. I want to remind our participants that you can submit questions in using the Q&A feature. So if there's anyone who has a question for any of the panelists, if you would please share those through the Q&A feature. We do want to hear from our audience, and I'm sure that the panel would love to answer some of your questions. The next question I'm going to direct to both Representative Cunningham and Ebony. Representative Cunningham, I'll start with you. Some opponents argue that the 14th Amendment makes the ERA unnecessary. Do you agree with them? And what do you perceive to be the greatest benefits of the Equal Rights Amendment?
I do not agree with them. If that was the case, if we were already written into the Constitution, we wouldn't have to worry about being paid fairly as women based on gender. That's number one. That's the basic of what we want, is to be paid fairly. And if we look at the numbers, we know that we are paid less than the Caucasian woman, and then the man, and then it comes on down. So if we had that in the Constitution, we wouldn't have to be worried about being treated differently and unfairly. So I think that is one of the major proponents of it, because right now across this country, as COVID is raiding the country, we have essential workers who look like us, who have children, who are still sacrificing, getting maybe a little hazardous pay, some of them not getting that. And even if they are, it's still less than anybody else is getting. So why not go ahead and make the woman equal inside of the Constitution? And we wouldn't have to worry about whether this company is going to pay me fair, because they would have to pay us fairly. So I think that's one of the main objectives that we can get done if the ERA comes about. I mean, a lot of people are still saying, well, you don't need it, you don't need it. Well, looks like we do. It looks like we do, because I mean, why would I want to be losing, even after I get a 4-year degree, I'm still making $10,000 to $15,000 less than my counterpart. That's outrageous. I mean, you know, it's Wake Up America, because every other country has moved forward with amending their Constitution. You've seen more women being elected based on some of that change, but we're just behind. And if it doesn't, we'll still be in the same situation in the next decade. And we need to move forward, fight for the Equal Rights Amendment, so we can get what is fair and equitable for us as African-American women and women of color.
Thank you for that, Representative Cunningham. All good points. And you're right, we're still fighting. We're definitely still fighting for that seat at the table, and really to be recognized in all facets. And so I agree that this is important work. And so we thank you for being in support of that. Ebony, what would you add, or what are your takeaways as far as the importance of the ERA and the greatest benefits of the ERA? I think you're muted.
My students are going to laugh at me because I'm always telling them to unmute themselves. If the 14th Amendment was about asserting citizenship, we know that it didn't do its job. We know that the reason why the right wing is gunning for birthright citizenship is because citizenship is at risk, right? If you're born in this country, you're meant to have all the rights and privileges of being an American citizen. And we know that there are whole categories of people who don't have access to due process, who don't have access to everything that we're supposed to be granted. And we know that as women, along with the salary differentials, there's also just access to serving in government, access to, we see with COVID-19, who is responsible for staying home and taking care of the kids versus who is doing the Zoom meeting and how that's working, who can go back to work, who needs childcare. Part of what Congresswoman Chisholm was doing was asserting her right as a citizen to run for office. She had to say it over and over again. I'm of age, I'm a citizen, and yet folks laughed at her. I was just watching again, Walter Cronkite said that she tossed her bonnet in the ring, right? So this laughing at us when we try to assert our citizenship. So we know that the ERA is still necessary, because if it were frivolous, if it were no big deal, they wouldn't be fighting back against it, right? If it's so frivolous, well, why not pass it? So clearly there are some rights enshrined in there that we need access to that will raise us up as citizens.
Thank you, Ebony. Great points. As I peruse the chat, I see a comment and a question from Judge Colvin, who's actually a board member of CLA, and she may have been just adding it to the chat, but I think it's a good question to pose here. So I want to run that by the panelists, and any one of you can add your thoughts. But she stated that she noticed there were very few attendees that indicated that they wanted to run for office. With Black women being the most consistent voting bloc, what are the hindrances that cause Black women to recoil from taking the plunge into the political forum? Senator Spearman.
I think I touched on it a little earlier, and that is, when you run for office, you put yourself out there. And as Black women, we know that the first thing people are going to try to do is they're going to either try to attack our gender, our femininity. They're going to try to go after our ethnicity. They're going to try to find something in your background to try to tear you down. And for many of us, we've been struggling all of our lives to just stand up. And so that fear of being knocked down again is real. And as I said before, people want to push you into that corner and say, don't accept any PAC money. Well, guess what? When you don't accept PAC money, that puts you at a disadvantage. Okay, you look at Kamala Harris. She had to drop out because she wasn't raising enough money. She swore off PAC money, initially. And I always said, don't let people convince you that that's wrong. Because first of all, if you tell me that I can't take PAC money, or that means that I'm bought and sold, I'm going to tell you, you do not have the right to impugn my integrity. Because I take money doesn't mean that I'm going to go the way they go. When I take money, it's because I need some money to pay volunteers. I need money to buy walk cards. I need money for ads. I need money for all those sorts of things. So unless you're going to give me exactly what the PAC would give me, then please be quiet and get out of my face. So I think that, for a lot of us, it's just the fear of being knocked down again. And it's the fear of being scrutinized. I remember when I ran my first race in 2012, and I happened to run against a 15-year incumbent. And everybody kept saying, you can't beat him, you can't beat him. He had like a little bit more than $250,000 in his war chest. And I knew when I was winning, when I saw my sign starting to disappear. I knew that I was winning when I heard, the rumors and things. Somebody came to me and said, I heard somebody say in church, well, you can't vote for her because I think she's gay. And the person turned around and said, she is. Did you hear how she fought for the repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell? So that's another reason why you run who you are as who you are. And so they're going to do this. Rest assured, they're going to do it. The only thing that we have to do is put steel on our back and know that we have overcome before. We were built for this race, and don't let anybody turn you around.
Thank you, Senator Spearman, and you're right. We were built for this race and every other race too. We are strong women, and so we have the capability to do any and everything that we desire to do. Thank you for sharing. We do have one last poll that we want to ask the audience, and then I have another question from the audience before we spend our last bit of time together talking specifically about leadership. Okay, so what is the most serious challenge that we currently face? And it looks like the top three were racial inequality, race relations, climate change, environmental degradation, and COVID-19 were sort of the top three challenges identified by our audience. And I think those are some legitimate challenges facing us currently. The question we had from the audience was, don't we need a woman on the Supreme Court to address some of these issues? So who would like to take that on? I see. I see not everybody at once, but let's see. Senator Spearman, I think, raised her hand first, and then Representative Cunningham, I'll come to you next.
I think we do. I think you're absolutely right. First thing we have to do is get an African-American woman as a VP. And once we do that, the VP is also in, usually works with the president in selecting the Supreme Court justices. So let's get the VP, and I think the rest of it will follow.
Okay.
Thank you, Pat. I definitely believe that we should get a female African-American on the Supreme Court. Let's just say there was a strategy in place when this president was becoming president. They held up Barack Obama's almost all of his nominations. And they did that for a reason the Senate wouldn't approve. And that was to stack the courts. By stacking the courts with all the conservatives, that means that once again, women had become challenged and limited in what they could do. That's why you're starting to see Roe v. versus Wade to be an issue. Now, once more, you're seeing those type of issues come up again because they have the power with the court stack. So if we do change this presidential cycle, it would behoove us if we get a vice president, African-American female. They're going to need one because that's the only way you're going to turn out the vote in the South and across the country to get the presidential elected in 2020. They would have to have an African-American because who's committed? 98 to 99% are committed to the Democratic Party. We know that. We're going to go vote when nobody else go vote, and most likely going to vote Democrat. But if we have a woman that looked like us, she brings a large gasp of information from her walk in life, from her experience, from her struggle that we can relate to. Because we're always looking at people that don't look like us. And we need people that do look like us, that have walked our walk, talked our talk, and lived and struggled and had the experiences. And also, as far as I'm concerned, a woman, and I'm going to be partial, and I'm sorry, we have a wider view of the world, and we have the capability of working with almost anyone. We don't pretty much select and say, okay, they all crazy. Yeah, they might be crazy, but it's one in there that's not crazy, and it's some in there that you're going to be able to work with. But we're not selective like that. We look at what a person has to bring to the table. We are objective. We think through things. We're logical, and we bring our experience and our struggle. And that's what make us be so strong. And that's what make us be passionate. And that's what make us be comfortable in our skin. And if we can get a woman like that, we got a powerhouse. And that's what we need is an African-American woman that has that experience to bring forth, that she can generate and out into the entire country, because we are limited. If you look at media, and I'm gonna stop talking, if you look at media, you're not gonna see us that much on the TV. We looking bad most of the time when the TV show up, you know, to put us on the camera. But we've got some, you know, very positive outlook women that bring a lot to the table, and media is not showing them. But the switch needs to be flipped, and it's time for it to happen.
Yeah. And Ebony, can I add to that, please, just a minute?
Sure.
You know, there have been some African-American women who have been talked about in the media in terms of possible vice presidential candidates. I'm going to ask us to do one thing: quit tearing down people. Quit tearing down, you know, those who have the best possibility of getting selected. You know, people don't want, you know, they talk about Kamala because she was an AG. They talk about Val Demings because she was a cop. They talk about Stacey. I mean, you know, they just keep over and over and over again. We got to learn how to play the long game, because the folks that put Trump in office knew he was an idiot, and they knew that he was dangerous. Nobody knew that he would be responsible for more than 60,000 deaths. Okay, they didn't care. They didn't care. They knew what they wanted. They wanted tax cuts for the rich. They wanted to make sure that they stacked the Supreme Court. And so this whole artificial thing about, well, if he chooses this person, if Biden chooses this person, then I just can't vote for him. You know what? This is Trump is an existential threat to our future. Our very lives depend upon it. And so what I say to people who want to try that Puritan test, I say, listen, if Vice President Biden chooses Lassie for his running mate, we ought to go to the store, buy a bag of dog food, bow wow, Vice President Lassie, and vote for him anyway. We cannot afford to do the things that other people who have privilege, they have the privilege of saying, well, I could probably survive Trump. We don't have that privilege. So quit tearing down our own. People that are put forward that are qualified. And we know, as my friend Carla said, that we know will excite people across this country. Quit tearing them down. Quit buying into that argument, because one of the worst things for African-American women who are running for leadership, running for office, or trying to do anything is that we buy into the argument that somebody else put out there that something's wrong with the person who's trying to get ahead. Quit doing it. Bow wow, Vice President Lassie. That's what I think.
Yes, the long game is important. Thank you, Senator Spearman, for your comments there. I have another question that is coming from our audience. Let's see. They wanted you, the panelists, to speak more on the importance of consistent civic engagement in ensuring the issues we deem important continue to get the attention of our elected officials. Representative Schofield, what would you say to that?
So again, I started out in advocacy, where grassroots advocacy. So I'm always going to take it to the street, and then I'll bring it into the House. And one of the things that I stay true and steadfast on is that you bring all people and empower all voices. So I started in the high school by going into the high school and teaching them the importance of using their voice, having a strong voice, saying what they want to say, being heard, and taking action on that. I think what we need to do is game recognizes game. And people when they're transparent and when they're authentic. And so when you're looking to bring your issues, you find people that have the character and the integrity to align with what you're doing and what you need to get done, and you rally around that. This work is a long process. It's long work. So you're not a one and done. You've got to stay consistent. This is going to cost you something to be involved in civic engagement. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost you commitment. These are the three things that we need to do so that we stand behind the leaders that are already out in front doing the work. Let me just tell you something. The people that are leading, there's some of them that just plain need to go. We can recognize that. They need to just go. They're complacent. They're not doing anything. They're self-serving. They've got all these motives and message of manipulation. But there are some people that are hardworking, that are ready to get down and dirty. Those are the people that you need to stand with you to uphold your head, stand on our shoulders, lift you up. Don't remove us when we're doing the job, because the environment is there's nothing more that you can do that we haven't tried. You need to stay consistent with people that you see have the integrity and the character and the wherewithal and the perseverance to get stuff done. We need real leaders. What does that look like? That's what you decide. What is the type of leader that I need for me to get to that next step? Surround yourself with that. Stop talking amongst yourselves and your neighbors where they can't do anything for you. Find groups, change your setting so that you become empowered to do more. That's how we get stuff done. We impact and infiltrate instead of sitting back and just picking and choosing. There's some good folks out here getting good stuff done. Join that fight.
Another question that has come in is, and we're moving into our last segment, which is specifically about leadership. So I'll start with this question, is what type of leadership do you want for your community? Ebony, you want to start us off there? You're on mute again.
I want strong progressive leadership. I think that goes without saying. I want someone who understands intersectionality. So we're women, we're Black, we may be LGBT, we may be from the working class, we may have student loan debt. I do. You know, we may have lost a parent. We may, it may have taken us longer than 4 years to get through college. Maybe we don't have a college degree like Congresswoman Presley. We all are coming from these different backgrounds, and I want someone who recognizes, you know, the wealth of our experiences and can speak to different groups. So you can speak at the governor's mansion, you can speak at the local committee, you can speak to the neighbors, you can speak on the corner, you can speak to the teenagers. I'd like to see leaders who can address sort of the wealth of those experiences that we find in our community.
Great point.
Representative
Schofield.
You know, I want to see the kind of leader that that can get things done. We don't just talk about it. I want that leader that has the heart and the action. You've got to marry the two. You just can't talk and have just passion. You've got to have plan. You've got to execute. You've got to get results. And by the time we're coming to the table, the party is already over and you want to start complaining about the hors d'oeuvres. It just doesn't work like that. We need leadership that exemplifies the character and integrity of what our community needs. And to Ebony's point, the needs are different, they're diverse. Can I understand and have active listening to all that are involved and bring back the value of everybody to know that their problem is my problem and I have a solution. If I don't have a solution, let me network with other people that I know I can send this to Senator Spearman or send this to Representative Cunningham. I have networks. The problem is if we're so myopic and we can't do anything but for ourselves and in our own community, then you've limited your global outreach and your expansion. We need to train our kids to move beyond just talking about it, but start to network and net weave with one another so that we have resources to draw from.
All great points. And I think it really gives us sort of a good segue into our next question. Amid the current crisis that we have here in the United States, but also globally, we've seen several examples of leadership. Some have been good, some have been bad, and some don't really have an accurate descriptor. And so my question is, what do you believe is the most important trait for modern leaders to have? What would be that thing, the it factor for modern leaders? And I see Representative Cunningham is like, I'll take that one. So coming to you, Representative Cunningham, to get your thoughts.
Thank you for the question. I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for a real person to present to me, to watch after what my needs are. And that's what I try to do. I try to be authentic. I don't want you to placate me. I want you to tell me the truth because I can handle it. And when we walk in those rooms, that's what I demand. I want to say to you that you have to teach people how to treat you. And that's the mode that I work and operate in at the General Assembly. When I walk in the room, they know I'm in the room because they know I'm not going to play with them. I'm not going to take no wooden nickels. I'm not going to lay down on my backs of my people. They know that from the beginning because I done told them, they done seen it, and they're going to work with me, but they're going to know their limitation because I'm not going to sacrifice the backs of my people. So they know that, but I'm looking for authenticity, not just from the State House. I want it from the Congressional House. I want it from the Senate, and I want it from the President and the Supreme Court. We don't have that. Right now, we got people that say they have our best interests at heart that are representing us in all levels of the, but they don't. So I'm looking for authenticity. And I believe more people out here now are looking for folk to stand up and tell them the truth and stop playing games with them. And if they're gonna work in government, work in government. Don't go to take the resources that's available to you when they're not trickling down to the community. People are getting sick and tired, and we're in a sick and tired moment, and they're looking for authenticity.
Authenticity is a great trait. Senator Spearman, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Yes, ma'am. I want to, and I want to take everything that has already been said. But the other thing that I look for in a real good leader is a leader who can cry. A leader who can cry. When Jesus went to the grave of Lazarus, even though he'd healed people, he'd fed people, people blind had eyes open and all this, but he got there and he cried. many of us watched President Obama as he stood before the nation and talked about the shooting in Connecticut, those kids. And we saw him at moments of crisis when he was not afraid to cry, because a leader that can cry, number one, that says that they are comfortable enough in their leadership skills and ability to be able to show some emotion. The second thing it does is it shows people that you are connected to me. You have some empathy for me. The other thing that it does is it says to people, it's okay to cry, because most of the time when you get cry, when you are hurt bad enough to cry, that usually means you are hurt bad enough to fight. And so I want leaders who are strong, bold, progressive, but I also want to look for a leader that is not afraid to cry.
I like that. And I had a follow-up to that question. And I think Senator Spearman did allude to it a little bit, but my question was, would the trait that you've selected be the same for male and female leaders? And if not, why not? I see you shaking your head, Representative Cunningham.
Yes, my trait would be the same. It wouldn't matter the gender, it would be the same. Everyone has something different to bring to the table, and we definitely respond differently, but it should be the same. I'm looking for authenticity. I'm looking for the real truth. We don't need games. It's game time is over. It's time for real people to be available to us in our communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. And so I know we're just slightly over the hour, but I do have one last question that's kind of still in the realm of leadership. What resources would you recommend to someone who wants to enhance their leadership aptitude? And anyone or all of you can chime in here. I see Ebony shaking her head. So what would you have to say there?
I will say apply to any leadership programs you find, even if it doesn't seem like it's exactly made for you. I, along with your board president, Ashlyn, attended the Women's Campaign School at Yale, now the Campaign School at Yale, in 2012. Well before I ever knew I might like to run for office, I just thought it would make me a better teacher and a better person. And then what I learned, I moved forward from that. Read as much as possible. In preparing for this, I read Barbara Winslow's A Catalyst for Change about Congresswoman Chisholm. Watch any documentaries that you can find. Talk to people. If you find someone who's a good teacher, stay in touch with them. You really can learn from anyone. So just prepare yourself as much as possible and be widely read and attend things and really sort of expand your knowledge, so that when your leadership moment is there, you have had a range of experiences and you feel comfortable around all kinds of people, and you know that you have lots of knowledge.
Representative Schofield.
Well, for me, it was a little different because I've always been a leader ever since I was a child. And I can tell you why, because I couldn't stand playing the game, follow the leader. I had to be the leader. So I always knew that there was something about me that set me different and apart. My parents didn't see that. And so as I struggled going through school, trying to find my identity, I was always the one that was picked to be first in everything. And then as I got into my college years, I was only the only one. So I was the only African-American woman in my class. I was the only African-American at a job. I was only. And that by nature made me stand out. I knew I was vocal. I knew I was strong, but I had a very sense of low self-esteem, not recognizing I was a leader. And so as I started to your point, Ebony, was drawn to leadership books and seminars, and I got into ministry, and I started to develop my leadership skills and become comfortable. So surround yourself with people that always are telling you there's something special about you. What they're saying to you is, I recognize that leader or that it factor in you that you may not see, and help them, and they'll help you develop yourself as you grow into this role. I was able to teach leadership, and I am a leadership developer. So I coach people to be leaders and train them to be leaders, recognizing the gift. I did that with my daughter, exposing her to everything. And so that the leadership in her, when you walk into a room, I want women to be comfortable. And it doesn't make a difference. You're not trying to be right. You're not trying to be the best. You're just trying to be authentic. and be the leader, that person inside that says, I'm comfortable and confident in owning this space. This is not what, you can't take this from me. This is mine because I know who I am.
Confident and comfortable. I like it. Senator Spearman.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that, you know, we've talked about authenticity. One of the things that being authentic does is it makes you vulnerable. So you have to be willing to be vulnerable to let people know I've been there before. And my pain at that time may not be your pain, but I do understand the process of going from pain to healing. So I do understand that. The other thing that I would say is that sometimes people don't take us seriously. And, you know, we can show empathy, we can have a sense of humor, but at the same time, we have to make sure that we are projecting the no nonsense kind of person and make sure that people understand what I'm here to do is to get a job done. And I know when I was in the military, my first couple of years in the military, as an African-American woman, you know, some white guys who were like privates would walk past me and not salute. And I'm like, you know, hey, come back here. You know, I'm not going to accept that. Since I've been elected, there have been people who've come to the witness table in a committee that I chair and want to do something like, well, Spearman, excuse me, you will not call me that, okay? And sometimes people will test you and test your willingness to be a strong leader, okay? Because you're empathetic doesn't make you weak. It actually makes you strong. They'll test your tenacity for being a strong leader. And what I say to people is, you know, you might not want to go there because I don't play. When my mom told me that I was going to have recess in kindergarten, I quit. I don't play. Okay? I don't play.
All right. Representative Cunningham, would you like to add anything to this?
Well, you know, Pat pretty much said it well. I know for me, I went into as a professional environment. That's where I came from, and went to the state house, and I found out they're not that professional. I'm sorry. And I also found out that more of us, more African Americans, have degrees and are well educated compared to what we look at on the other side of the aisle. And it's acceptable, but we have to do so much better and be on our toes and our P's and Q's. And you got to be reading and you got to do the extra work, even though they think that you may not have it, but you got it. And, you know, I said, you know, I teach people how to treat me. If somebody comes out of line and address me improperly, I'm going to stop right there and correct them, because didn't nobody give me the position. I got elected and I earned it. So, you know, I don't allow that disrespect. And, you know, and I realized by me not doing that in that environment is that I do have the respect of those other people that don't have a D in front of their name. I have more problems with the ones with the D than I do with the R, because the R's already know I'm not playing. And then the D's, I just take it to them and give it to them. And I throw up my hands and I walk off and say, look, you can take it or you can leave it and bounce. You know, that's just how it is. You have to be hardcore in what we have known as a man's world. And it's very few women up there anyway, but you need to be professional. So I maintain a level of professionalism when I'm dealing in that realm at all times. It ain't no play. It ain't no play.
Well, I want to thank you, ladies. I think that's a good way to end. We have certainly had a very robust discussion on all things Shirley Chisholm's legacy, leadership, and also just what it is to be a woman of color and navigate in these spaces. And so I want to thank you, ladies, for contributing so much to this discussion this evening. I would allow you time to provide any closing thoughts or comments that you have and would like to share with the audience. So I'll start with Representative Cunningham, if you have anything else that you'd like to say in parting.
Well, I'm concerned about COVID in our communities, and as a healthcare provider, I could not bring it up, is that we definitely need to be protecting ourselves. If we have underlying disease processes, protect yourself. It is not over. It will be coming again in the fall. So I would say protect yourself, wash your hands, do what you need to do to keep your family safe and yourself alive during this period of time. I'm out, but I protect myself with the mask. And just do what you have to do, because the interest of your family is not with the government at this time. It's with you, the ones that surround you, your neighbors, and that you're living in communities with right now. And it's all in your hands. It's not in the government's hands. It's in your hand if you survive this. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Representative Cunningham. Senator Spearman.
And I would just say this, I agree. I think one of the things, first of all, I'm going to ask everyone who is listening, please make sure that you have completed the census, the 2020 census. Please make sure you've done that. And if you've done it, make sure that everybody in your family, all your friends, your circle, because a couple of things that will do is it makes sure that we have the money in our states to do what we need to do. But the other thing that it does, it shows people what our real numbers look like. And so please complete the census. And the next thing is, this is one of those elections where we can't play. We cannot play. We must get out and vote, because the current administration, along with other people who are just playing, monkey see, monkey do, and telling you go on out there and, they want to open up this and open up that. And I say, whom is opening up this thing? And are the whom opening it up so that life will be easier for those who can still do telecommuting? I look back and I say, my friend Dee Dawkins Hagler, she had won SOS if she'd been elected Secretary of State in, 2014, then Stacey Abrams would be Governor Abrams right now. So we got to recognize that every election counts. Get out and vote, and don't fall for the okie doke. Vote, vote, vote like your life depends on it, because our very lives depend on it. And make sure during this election, people understand that as African-American women, we're going to vote. We're going to vote in our best interest. But the other thing we're going to do is, after the election, from the White House all the way down the ballot, we're going to hold people accountable. And if you don't do what you said you were going to do, just like my mother used to say, I brought you into this world and I'll take you out. So, we have to let that be known. We're going to support you, but we're not going to continue to let you mistreat us. So.
Good points. Representative Schofield.
So, always, again, I don't know how many times I can follow Pat Spearman. I just don't know. We know the rally call. We know that the time is now. We've said enough is enough. And I just want to go back to 2 quick points that you said, the accountability measure. So I am at this space, in my life and in my journey as a legislator, that we know that you always are looking to us to hold us accountable. But here's the real deal. It's time for us to hold you accountable. We know that we're in the heart of this. COVID has proven some things. We know that the census is vital. You know that you have to vote. So if you're going to hold me accountable, then guess what? I'm holding you and all of your friends and everybody that you come in contact. I'm holding them accountable to get it done. We can do it with you. We can do it for you, but we need you to work with us to help us get us where we need to be. We're not doing this heavy lift. You can no longer sit in the bleachers and not do your part. The last thing I'll say on shifting my harsh gear, I'll bring it down a notch, but I want to say to you, COVID-19, as bad as it is, has also been a time for us to reset. It was time for us to reset with God, reset with ourselves, and reset with others. During this time in this space, what have you learned about you and the gaps and the needs in your community that now say, when I'm able to get out there and go to a different level or a different way of living, I'm going to do this. This is what this COVID space, it was a resetting of where we've come so far in the opposite direction of where we need to be. I know you can do it. So you're the answer to somebody's prayer, and you're the answer to somebody's movement. Now is your time.
I like that. It definitely was an opportunity to reset, but also a call to action, I believe, in so many regards. Ebony, would you like to add anything or any closing thoughts or comments?
Yes, to follow Rep. Schofield, I think that this time, if there can be any bright spot, is that we've had time to reconnect with one another, pick up the phone, call, see how people are doing. Part of being a leader is maintaining your community and checking in on folks. So that way, when you're telling them to fill out the census and to vote, or to, give $10 to whatever. They're not like, who's this? You have been calling, you have been checking in, you've been maintaining those relationships, and there's a give and take. So I've had phone calls with people that I haven't talked to in 6 months, and we've been Zooming. Why weren't we doing that before? So I'm hoping that we can maintain that and then use that to build the coalitions that we're going to need in these next few years.
Awesome. Again, I want to thank all of you ladies, all of the work that you do here in Georgia, Nevada, North Carolina, California, and all around our great nation is appreciated. This was a great conversation. And so we really thank you for contributing here to the discussion, but also giving of your time this evening. And so we thank you so much. I would share the website for our organization is chisholmleadershipacademy.org. We encourage our participants in the audience to visit our website, learn more about our organization and what it is that we seek to do in our community and specifically for women and girls of color. And also, if you are so inclined to give to this organization, we would greatly appreciate that too, as it would allow us to continue to do programs like this and others in the future. And so again, we thank you so much. And at this time, this concludes our webinar, and we wish all of you a great evening and ask that you stay safe, stay connected, and be well. Thank you.